24 hours ago. I took a long-distance bus from Kunming to Pu'er, and then from Mengkang border crossing in Gangchang County, Pu'er City. I followed the Damkar Highway into Suan Than District in Laos. The Damkar Highway is called Highway 1A in Laos, with the Nam O River, a tributary of the Mekong River, on one side of the road, and mountains and highlands and virgin forests on both sides. As soon as I crossed the border, I went to a motorbike rental shop in the town of Suan Than. There were plenty of bikes in the shop, and I chose a 1990 Honda C70, which was cheap, reliable, and unassuming. I took it for a test drive around the shop to make sure there were no problems and paid for it. I took the motorbike and headed back down Highway 1A. 5 kilometers east of the Nam Ou River is a clearing hillside surrounded by jungle that was my campsite for this wilderness survival. I followed the GPS instructions and turned off Highway 1A onto a wild road filled with low grass, the only route to the campsite. Soon the road came to an end. The GPS showed that the campsite was still about a kilometer away. And that the nearest way to get there was through the jungle on the hillside. But the motorbike couldn't continue, and I had to go on foot. I parked the car, switched on the sports camera, connected my mobile phone, and started the live stream. I looked into the camera and started to narrate. Hello everyone, I am Lao Zheng. This is the primeval forest in Suan Tang County, Laos. Let's start this live broadcast of wilderness survival. I carefully turn the camera to avoid the motorbikes and head in the direction of the campsite. The campsite is about a kilometer or so away. I'll have to make my own way. I pinned the camera to my chest and made sure it was on live. The number of people in the room started to jump. 9, 10, 11. 5 minutes later, the number of viewers passed 100. The old Zhang's Outdoor Life channel I created 2 years ago already had more than 2 million followers, making it a modest internet sensation. I drew my multi-purpose engineer's shovel from my bag and used one side of the blade to cleave through the half-man-high grasses as I marched forward. The grass had long since grown as tall as it had a year ago, and there was no sign of anyone having been there. As the view gradually opened up and the sky reappeared from overhead, a hillside clearing came into view. This was it, vaguely as it had been a year ago. I put down my gear and used an engineer's shovel to level the clearing slightly, creating an area of about 10 square meters. Gotta set up the tent and regenerate a fire while it's still light. Most importantly, keep broadcasting. I pulled the tripod out of my bag and set up the camera on one side of the clearing, adjusting the height and angle. Next, I pulled out a tablet and placed it where the camera couldn't get a shot. Found a video, pressed mute, and started playing. I pointed to the camera at the clearing and said, "Now let's start setting up the tent." I set up the tent one step at a time, following the position and angle in the tablet video. The door was facing the camera. The flap was rolled up at 45 degrees. The woodpile was 1 meter from the tent door, and the brazier used to hang the pots was angled at a 60-degree angle to the left of the fire. I reminded myself that I was on the air, and there was no room for error. The number of viewers on the live feed is still rising. 392, 393, 394, ... I light the firewood on the fire while answering irrelevant questions from the audience. It was important to light the fire early, so that this fire could be allowed to burn out by dark before moving on to the next step. Timing was important. Even though it had been demonstrated countless times in my head, I still couldn't help but feel nervous. It was quickly getting dark, and the fire on the camera's monitor screen was flickering, turning my face red. I walked off camera and picked up the jammer I had prepared, carefully glued it to the tripod, and switched it on. A jamming sound came from the monitor screen's speakers and the image flickered on and off. According to the programmed settings, the interference would occur 3 or 4 times at random intervals in the first 15 minutes, simulating the instability of the mobile phone signal network. After 15 minutes, the frequency of the interference would increase and the duration would be extended. After half an hour, the last interference will last for 1 minute until the image disappears, completely blocking out the mobile network signal and interrupting the live broadcast. I chatted with the viewers in front of the screen and mentally went through the next processes. Chopped wood, injured, bandaged, and the live feed was interrupted. The monitor screen flickered for a moment, significantly longer than the earlier interruption. I glanced at the timer on my tablet. 15 minutes. I suddenly felt rain falling on my face. I reminded myself not to look up at the sky. It wasn't raining on the video I'd already recorded. The good thing was that the rain was still barely perceptible. I guessed it wouldn't rain for 15 minutes, so I had to hurry. After another disturbance occurred, I prompted the viewer that the signal at the campsite might not be very good because it was far away from the settlement. As planned, I set out the collection of dead tree trunks in front of the camera, took out my engineer's shovel, and prepared to split the firewood. Thanks to countless previous drills, I was confident that my movements on camera would be smooth and natural. Holding the firewood, I swung the shovel with one hand and chopped down, splitting the dead tree trunk in 2. I try to keep the shovel as close as possible to the hand holding the firewood so that the injury later looks like an accident caused by carelessness. Viewer numbers continue to rise. 816, 817, 818, ... Video interruptions become frequent. It is now, there can be no hesitation. I actually asked myself once, how much determination does a person have to make to deliberately chop off his own finger? How hard would it be if one had to pretend it was an accident? Luckily, with the light of the fire behind me, I relaxed my facial muscles to make my expression as natural as possible. Then I brought the spade down on my index finger, which was holding the wood. Everything that followed came naturally. I dropped the shovel with a scream and sat back. The small half of my index finger flew into the darkness and landed nowhere. The pain made me dizzy for a split second, but I still had to desperately control my body to keep myself from leaving the shot. It hurt too much. Shit. I twisted my body, barely able to catch my breath as tears spilled uncontrollably from the corners of my eyes. Interruptions were still occurring from time to time. and I could hear the live feed skimming by message after message with a poof bubble sound effect. The viewers were clearly shocked by what they had just seen, but I no longer had time to care what they were saying.